Hey, friends, welcome. Immigration, visas, recession layoffs. That is what we're going to be covering today because you've got questions. In this webinar, we've got solutions. We know there's problems, there's struggles, and we want to bring amazing answers in this live session. Welcome, my friends. I'm Rob with Chine Coaching. We have an amazing guest, Sophie, who will introduce herself in just a second. But this is a much needed time as we begin this year. We're 1 month into 2023, and this live webinar is going to be focusing on the visa struggles people are having with the recession layoffs, and then what's going to happen with immigration this year. Every year the U.S. government makes changes, good, bad, unknown, and so we're going to be breaking those things down and then doing live Q&A. We want to help you guys answer your tough questions. At Shine Coaching, we're all about helping you succeed in your cross-cultural journeys, especially when it comes to visas, immigration. And we have the amazing immigration expert, Sophie Alcorn. Sophie, welcome back. We've collaborated before. We love having you join us in the Shine Coaching community. So please introduce yourself and how are you doing so far in this 2023?
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. It's such a pleasure to be here. I always love chatting with you, and you've really cultivated and attracted such a wonderful community of really inspiring people from around the world. So it's always a pleasure to get to be here with you and chat with you. Thank you so much for having me today. My background is I'm a certified specialist attorney in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization. I'm supposed to say that whole thing. Basically, I'm an immigration lawyer in California. My dad was an immigration lawyer. My mom is an immigrant from Germany. I've been technically practicing law. Oh God, this will be my 15th year. And I write for TechCrunch, a weekly column called Dear Sophie, where we do a lot of immigration education. And I also have a podcast called Immigration Law for Tech Startups. So the focus of my practice, Alcorn Immigration Law, is really helping people involved in STEM and early stage tech startups, immigrants who want to be startup founders, and startups that are hiring immigrants to figure out US visas and green cards. And there's never a dull moment. The new year got off to a bang, and here we are. And I can't believe it's already been, a month has already happened. So Here we are.
Yeah, but we're so excited to help you all tuning in to get you started on the right foot. Whether you've faced a layoff, whether you're trying to immigrate to America right now, in between, we're going to answer some of those big, tough questions for you guys. So make sure you stay tuned to the end for the live Q&A. We're going to, respond to those in the chat. But we're going to get started here, and we want to know where you guys are tuning in from. I'm here in the Dallas, Texas area. Sophie's there in the Bay Area, I think. Yep. In Mountain View, California.
Palo Alto now.
Palo Alto.
New curtains, okay. New city.
Yeah. So in the Bay Area, I know Alcorn Immigration, one of the top immigration firms out there in the Bay Area in that startup tech hub. So let us know in the comments, friends. I want to see where you guys tuned in from. All right, we got someone from the Caribbean, Antigua, Barbuda. Very cool. Where else? Let us know in the comments where you guys are watching from.
Disneyland. That's fun. Thanks for not going on Splash Mountain or something to be in this Splash Mountain.
Definitely. All right, we've got I'm guessing Buffalo, New York. We've got Dallas, Texas. Howdy, friends. We got India, Florida, Arkansas, London. Oh, very cool. This is exciting. People tuning in from all over.
Really
well, welcome, friends. Clemson, South Carolina. Awesome. Redmond, Washington. So Seattle area. Very cool. All right. So yeah, keep throwing those in the chat. We want to see. And if you guys are watching the replay later as well, let us know where you're tuning in from. Love seeing people across the country, around the world, being part of this Chine Coaching family. Cheers to everyone. And let's get this party started. So if we're going to jump in to just, what is this? What do people need to do with the layoffs? I know the recession's been tricky. I feel like every month in the last few months now, thousands, tens of thousands, especially these big tech companies, all these companies that everyone wants to work for are just laying off. What's causing these layoffs and what should people do? Especially all these H-1B workers with timelines. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? And then what are next steps, immediate actions people can take when they experience this heartbreaking layoff?
Yeah. So at a macro level, the tech companies are simply pivoting their strategy in terms of jobs because capital became more expensive. A bunch of money was printed in the pandemic. Now the Fed is trying to curb inflation, so they're raising interest rates. So the tech companies are like, whoa, it's not free to hire everybody away from my competitors anymore. We
Mm-hmm.
need to, decrease our payrolls. So, um, unfortunately, it just so happens that many people who work at tech companies in the STEM fields happen to be immigrants. And so this is having a large effect on the immigrant community. If you were laid off and you were on a work visa, such as an H-1B, an L-1, something of that nature, the really important thing to note is you have a ticking clock, a 60-day grace period. And if you do nothing, you have to get out of the United States before the end of those 60 days. And if you want to not have to leave the United States, you need to take proactive measures to be able to keep staying here legally. Such measures could include getting a new job from a company that will transfer your visa, or applying for visitor status for 6 months, or going back to school. So there's a variety of things you can do, but just if you're in an H-1B, please be so mindful of that 60-day grace period. And there may be students who were laid off too, or people on like H-4 work permits. So not everybody's in the same bucket. From what I was seeing, probably at this point, more than 10,000 immigrants have been laid off on some non-immigrant status. People could be laid off on OPT or STEM OPT, right? It's arbitrary. So just pay very close attention to what your status is, when that was supposed to expire, what the particular rules are for unemployment in your status, and make sure to be super proactive by any deadlines. That's what you absolutely have to do if you're laid off and you're an immigrant.
Yeah. So very common is the H-1B
Yeah.
has that 60-day window. If people are getting, close to that 60 days, haven't found the new job yet, are there any other options, any alternatives, pivots they can consider before having to buy that ticket home?
Yeah, well, and you don't have to buy your own ticket home. That is actually one of the few rights you have as a laid off H-1B holder is your company owes you the price of a one-way ticket back home.
No
So
way.
I
I didn't know
guess you
that.
could, so you could get them to reimburse you for that if you decide you want to go back. If you stay, then they're not going to like cover your room and board or anything. So Rob, tell me your question again.
Yeah. So 60 days is coming up.
Yeah. You're down to the wire and you're like, oh my God, I haven't found any. Okay. So actually, I think you need to start making plans. Like if you get laid off, some of the severance packages I'm seeing now actually say, hey, instead of giving you this lump sum cash payout and making your last day today, we know you're an immigrant. So if you want, instead, you can sign this other thing. And this is all under NDA. So like nobody's talking about it, but I've just like gotten through the grapevine. This is how it's working. So some generous employers are saying, look, we'll make your last day in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, and you're not going to get a cash payout and you're still going to be working here. But then that gives you some lead time to know your 60 days is coming, because 60 days is really, really, really short, because you have to, you have to get your resume together. You have to apply for jobs. You have to be called for interviews. You have to do first interviews. You have to do second interviews. You have to actually get an offer. You might have to negotiate. You have to make sure they know you're an immigrant and that you need H-1B processing. And then they have to hire their immigration lawyers to start the paperwork. So even if you're in an H-1B and you get a job offer on day one of your grace period, it's still really hard for a big company, which is probably not very nimble, to get your H-1B transfer filed by day 60. So what you can do to just buy more time, and you can't work, but the proactive, low-hanging fruit thing that anybody can do for themselves without having to depend on anybody else. And a lot of people just apply themselves online through the USCIS website. You can get a lawyer, but a lot of people do it themselves, is filing a change of status. It's Form I-539. And if you're on H-1B, you can request a change of status to B1 or B2 visitor status. B1 is visitors for business. B2 is visitors for pleasure and tourism. And you can request a 6-month window to be able to stay in the US. And you have to explain yourself. So if you're like, I'm going to stay in America forever because I'm a patriot and I want to be a US citizen, guess what? This thing is going to get denied.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a permissible use of a B1, B2. But people get B2s to go to Disneyland, visit their friends across the country, go backpacking in the Rockies, see a doctor for medical treatments, right? There's like all sorts of legitimate reasons, but they have to be temporary. And also for the B1 visitor status, a lot of startup founders use that because they're like, well, I need to incorporate, I need to talk to VCs, I need to talk to my lawyers. So if you're not working for a company and getting paid, you can do business activities as well. So now, Rob, the thing, guess how long it takes to get a decision on a B1, B2 change of status?
Probably not quick.
No. So here's the total like crazy thing about our system that's so backlogged still. So it like got worse in COVID and it hasn't really gotten better yet. This change of status where you request 6 months. So if you like applied today, you'd be like, oh, I want my 6 months from, let's say I was laid off January 1st. My grace period ends March. I'm just making stuff up. The math isn't accurate, but let's just say March 1st. So I'm going to file now and I'm going to request my change of status to B2 from March 1st, plus 6 months. God, what is that? September 1st, right? Mm-hmm. So you might not, even though you're requesting this status from March to September of 2023, the government is taking 1 to 2.5 years to decide whether that 6 months in 2023 is approvable. So you probably won't find out till the end of 2024 if you got approved, which is pretty nuts.
Too late.
It's too late, but you still have to do it. And then you get into this like, it's sort of like the links of a chain where like every link has to connect for the chain to hold when you pull it, but you only know in retrospect. So I would say the weirdest thing about all this is if you then want to switch back, like let's say on April 1st, the employer's like, great, we're going to hire you and we're going to file your H-1B. We love you, which is not a far stretch because unemployment decreased even more in the jobs report last week. And the economy is actually super strong. So this whole thing is like a mind F thing.
Yeah.
But just if you are able to transfer from one H-1B to another in the 60-day window, you get to start working as soon as the new company files the new H-1B petition. If you are technically in B1 pending status, when the new employer comes along, you don't get to start upon filing. You have to wait until the H-1B is approved again. So like, let's say you're in B1 you're in requested B1 status starting March 1st, new employer comes along, April 1st says they're going to file it. They do an H-1B with premium processing. They request a start date of May 1st. It actually takes longer. It gets approved on May 15th. Like you can't start working for them on May 1st. You have to wait till their petition actually gets approved. And then if you want to travel later, even though your B1, B2 is going to take 18 months, talk to the company's immigration lawyer, because after the H-1B is approved, as long as you get a visa, you can probably leave and that'll like abandon the B1, but in retrospect, it'll probably be okay. But just talk to a lawyer about those details.
That is a complicated dance. So
it's really insane.
Hope you guys can assess those options. Hopefully you can bounce back from these layoffs.
Yeah.
But let's think big picture now this year, 2023, in the fall. And really, those layoffs came at the worst time for people because it was the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas time, really hard to get interviews.
And they've continued too, which is the other thing.
Yeah, January was full of them.
Yeah.
But what is going to be the ripple effect this year, with people immigration in the US. Yeah, let's talk about kind of these big picture effects.
Well, best time ever to be in the H-1B lottery, probably within, plus or minus 5 years from now. So that's super weird. But there's still so many open technology jobs in the United States. So if you are, and I know the community involves lots of international F1 students, people who are looking at applying for a regular OPT or STEM OPT, whose hope is that, each year in the lottery, there will be an employer to sponsor them. I think your odds are going to be better than ever being selected this year. I mean, last year was completely bonkers, like 485,000 registrants were seeking 85,000 H-1B spots last year. So I think the number will go down, but also there's a ton of companies that are hiring that would be motivated to pay those, $10 fee and put people in the lottery. So if you have a chance this year for one or multiple employers, like definitely go for it. Big picture effects. Well, hope springs eternal that, maybe one day there will be immigration reform. Very happy that my local members of Congress, Anna Eshoo and Zoe Lofgren, wrote a letter to the Department of Homeland Security requesting that the grace period be increased from 60 to 120 days.
Wow.
It's a very, very slow bureaucracy. We're also potentially looking in the year ahead at filing fees for different immigration forms with USCIS going up by several, $100 because they're trying to increase capacity and hire more to get through the backlogs. Big picture, I would just say, if your dream is to live and work in the United States and have the opportunity to become a permanent resident one day, there's no, it's like deliberately waiting never really helps. So you might as well just go for it regardless of whatever the economic or macro situation is, because it takes so long. You just want to get in the game and get the sponsorship going or get qualified or wherever you're at. Yeah.
So one thing, the jobs reports have been encouraging, which is very counter to all the layoffs that have been happening, kind of funky.
Well,
but
the economy is really strong. Consumer spending is super high. So we just don't know how long the Fed's going to increase interest rates.
Just the big tech companies overhired and overspent, and are kind of coming due on their paychecks. But what about the effects this year? You want to talk about the ideas of national security and even national brain drain as well? And what are some of those ripple effects?
Well, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but maybe this will, if you are an immigrant going through this, I think it's really important for you to hear, because, so although there's a lot of political rhetoric about immigration, the truth is that high-skilled immigration is critical to the security of the United States, but also the future of the world. And immigrants are amazing contributors. And both the Democrat and Republican recent administrations in the Biden National Security Report and the Trump National Security Report both talk about how recruiting high-skilled immigrants from other countries, the world's best and brightest, people who study science, engineering, who conduct research, who know how to be tech entrepreneurs, having more people like you is critical to the national security of the United States and the economy. And so, if you are frustrated by this news, I hope you don't give up, because the United States needs you. We want the next Google, Apple, Tesla, SpaceX, whatever, to be created in the United States, right? Obviously for, economic benefit to the United States, but also because we want those technologies existing in places that have freedom and rights and in capitalist societies, right, where they can flourish. And so I think by not changing our immigration system, we're at risk of potentially losing these critical flows
Yeah.
of talent and labor. But if you're, like, I get frustrated because I'm like, do these programs where, countries and their central banks have startup accelerators, and they're like literally trying to pay the most brilliant people in the world to come there and start companies. And I'm like, how do I build a thing to do this in the free market? And all the Americans are like, well, we don't have a government that does that. We let the free market take care of it. Like, yeah, but like the US needs to be doing the recruiting, but it's not. So consider me your like mascot telling you you're needed, you're valuable, we need you, we want you, please stay, please keep fighting. It's really important, not just for you, but like for the future of humanity. So yeah.
And I love how y'all's law firm too definitely specializes in entrepreneurs and startups. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's a sweet spot for you guys. And there's
Yeah.
really cool avenues for people who want to be startup founders as immigrants in America. So
Yeah.
come start things in America, and Sophie will help you champion that. So,
Absolutely.
and hopefully a lot of these are going to come from students. A lot of these students come and study here, get a great education, and then give back and add value to America. I always encourage students, hey, don't come to take, but come give and give back to America, which gave you the opportunities. So what do students need to know about this year with immigration, with the, strange economy, recession, not recession, tech layoffs,
Yeah.
transitioning into other types of visas. So let's talk about students for a minute.
Okay. So if I were, let's just say, and a lot of people come from master's degrees, but just starting at the beginning, if I were a freshman on F1, I would absolutely declare a STEM major. If you also love philosophy or political science, great, study that as a double major or a minor. But definitely keep track of which degrees at your school will allow you to qualify for STEM OPT after you graduate. I think you should get work experience while you're still enrolled. So the first year you can't work, but then the first summer you can get curricular practical training. You still have to pay for credits usually, but you can get a job somewhere as long as a professor's supervising you. Also, you can get job experience before you graduate on pre-completion OPT. You just have to be super mindful of like the timing rules so that you don't use up all of your post-completion OPT before you graduate inadvertently. But I think the more job experience you can get, in addition to making money, but also America is really about networking, who you know, referrals. Like, yes, we have tons of ways to look for jobs online, but especially where you're needing immigration support, the more you can cultivate personal relationships, even as a student through internships with employers, I think really gives you a leg up. And then just be looking, the standard route is for companies to sponsor you for the H-1B lottery. You can do it in your last degree. Like you can get them to sponsor you before you graduate. So if you're going to graduate in May or June with your bachelor's, master's, or PhD, and you're doing on-campus recruitment now, and you're looking for that job and you get an offer, even if your start date isn't going to be until July 1st on your regular OPT work permit, that company should still be putting you in the lottery in April, even before you graduate. And if you're using that master's cap, if you're selected, as long as you do the H-1B filing before June for the deadline, as long as you've gotten your master's degree by then it should work. So take every chance. But then also the biggie is you don't have to only be in the employer-sponsored immigration routes. And I'm not telling you to go out and marry an American who you met on Tinder to get a green card. Of course, if you are going to marry a US citizen, there's an immediate relative pathway. But you should only do family-sponsored immigration in the case of a real good faith marriage. You never want to take any chances with that. But the other thing that I think a lot of students, and if my kids were immigrating to the US, this is what I would want them to know. You can actually get green cards by yourself, for yourself, based on either your past accomplishments or what you're going to contribute to the US in the future. And you do not have to depend on a future spouse or a future employer. And so The two main green card categories for self-petitioning are the EB-1A for extraordinary ability and the EB-2 national interest waiver. If you were born in India, the EB-2 is probably still going to have a long wait time. So if you're born in China or India, EB-1 is good.
Is that the quote unquote Einstein visa?
Yes, but if you're not Albert Einstein, it is completely fine. Normal people get these all the time. And I feel like, Rob, this is a lot of what you do is you help people learn how to position themselves to succeed in the United States. And like some of the things I had to think about in starting my law firm were like, okay, how do I brand myself? How do I want to be seen as a thought leader? So those are some of the types of questions that you can ask yourself for these green cards. And you know, if you have even like an MBA or a master's of computer science, and then you could do like, hey, I'm EB2 NIW. I was born in the Netherlands and the US has a job shortage in the tech field. And I know about this interesting thing of electrical engineering. So the US needs me. I'm not going to take away jobs for Americans. I want a green card myself. That's it, right? And if you're from China or India or you want to go into the EB1 category, it's like, you know, look, I did this research project, or I mean, you have to have like some body of work that you've done that you're passionate about. You have to do something. But after you've like done the thing, whether it's like launch a startup or do some like research in your grad school research department on some like sub field and like your technical niche of like maybe the overlap of like you know, human computer interaction with biotech something. I've seen people who have done enough PR and writing and things based on that. Like you do the meat of the work, and then in 3 to 6 months you can like get all the PR about it and qualify. So it's totally doable. And so if you're a student, I would just encourage you to think independently now, and all of that. Yes, it's some work, but it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot faster than the EB-5, which also recently became an option again. So I think I'm just thinking like simplest, shortest term path to freedom for like a highly motivated student, and it's really in one of those two categories.
I like it. And I think too, with just job search, students need to think differently. You know, while companies are hiring, the market's flooded with the tens and thousands of people who've been laid off. So instead of aiming for these big companies, you know, a lot of my friends who are working in more smaller, mid-sized startups, they've been fine. You know, they didn't overspend and overhire like these big fang mang companies.
Exactly.
And so that's a better thing to focus on. And one question here I wanted to throw up from Bill, you know, we talked about how big companies, it's hard to shuffle that paperwork quickly, but what about more smaller companies, startups? You know, how would that impact people who need this visa and paperwork help? Is there a difference in company size?
Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. So actually my law firm works with early stage startups, and they tightened hiring like last May. So we were already feeling that way before the rest of the economy, because the VCs were like, hey, this is going to happen, you know, hold on to your cash and then hire later when talent is more available, right? So it's actually the perfect time to work for an early stage company. And in terms of how small can you get away with and still have your H-1B approved, I mean, we've helped startups that have some funding get an H-1B for employee number 1 after the co-founders. So no company is too little as long as it's a real company and a real professional qualifying H-1B job. And a lot of what we're doing right now is helping those early stage startups that are hiring do the H-1B transfers for people who have been laid off, and it's absolutely possible. So yeah, that's an incredible opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what they're wondering is, you know, can startups with the limited financial resources, you know, can they work and negotiate smaller paychecks, you know, with more equity, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously you said, you know, the greater economic environment. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when it comes to salary and equity negotiation for an H-1B transfer at an early stage startup, we have, like in that scenario, the startups had maybe raised like $100,000 or $200,000 even. Like, we're not talking like, oh no, we only got 10 million instead of 15. Like, no, like $100,000 of cash in the
That
bank
goes
account.
fast.
Yeah, but that's enough to legitimately sponsor somebody for an H-1B transfer. So if the startup is like, oh crap, the checks are becoming smaller, we have to fight harder, there's still enough. Like, even raising $500,000 is sufficient to sponsor a few people for an H-1B. So even if VC funding has affected what the startup can raise, and therefore the company needs to negotiate smaller paychecks. Okay, here's the thing. Equity doesn't count for the H-1B minimum salary, which is called the prevailing wage. So any equity is wonderful, but it's not going to make an unapprovable H-1B approvable. So you have to make sure that the prevailing wage is met. Now, here are some tips. The prevailing wage is based on the geography of where the work is going to be done. So if the worker is working remotely from Boise, Idaho, instead of San Francisco, California, they're going to have a much lower wage. So if you have a distributed team, then having your immigrant hires be in places with, lower cost of living will definitely help decrease that salary requirement. Also, the H-1B transfer does not have to be to a full-time job. It could be to a part-time job, 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 30. So like, if based on the rate of pay, that's what you can fund, then there's ways to adapt the financial picture and make that prevailing wage more accessible for people.
Fantastic. All right, friends, before we continue, if you're loving this, learn a lot, hit that like button. Say thanks to Sophie for taking time out of her busy schedule to come hang out with our Chine coaching community, share about these important topics, answer your questions. We've got a couple more topics we're going to cover, and then hopefully in about 5-10 minutes, we'll be jumping into live Q&A to answer your questions. So get those ready. But our Chai question for y'all watching, so answer this in the comments. What are your future immigration goals? We want to know, and maybe we can address these more in the Q&A end, but what are your immigration goals? What kind of visas are you going for? What kind of future status? What do you want to see happen in America? We'd love to know. Are you going to come for a little bit and go home? Are you going to try and settle in the States? So let us know in the comments. What's your visa goals? What's your immigration goals? We want to know what kind of audience we're working with here today, who's hanging out with us. So go ahead and share that in the comments. Would love to see that. Okay, we talked about students and job search, but now more about the immigration landscape. Every couple of years, the government changes. That impacts government policies. So what can this landscape of immigration look like for 2023? What do people need to know as they're making and preparing for those goals that they're sharing about?
Yeah, I think we've touched on this tangentially. I mean, there's murmurings about the next presidential election already, but it's really too soon for any of that to have an effect on the immigration policy of today. I think the biggest things are really filing fees are probably going to go up this year. Premium processing might slow down they're always talking about this, but it's 15 days, but it's not defined, right? So they have the power to change it from 15 calendar days to 15 business days, which is more like 3 real weeks. So like, it might get a little bit slower, but they're also trying to increase capacity. One of the cool things that I just saw in the Indian news this morning was that they're trying to speed up visa processing for Indian nationals inside and outside of the United States and India. So there are now proposals that the State Department is working through, so that if you were born in India and let's say you're going on a business trip to London, or you're going on vacation in the Bahamas, and your H-1B visa has expired and you need a stamping interview, they're looking at allowing you to go to London to the consulate there, or the Bahamas to the U.S. consulate there, to get your visa stamp extended in your passport. So that would be so valuable and so needed. And it's not like major immigration reform, but the amount of
convenience.
Yeah. And if you multiply like the hundreds of thousands of people who are affected by this and the amount of time lost and opportunity cost, that would be an incredible value. So that would be amazing.
I love it. Yeah, I'm hoping, praying for these changes to happen
Mhm,
because
mhm.
sometimes it's real frustrating. And little changes can make a big difference with speed and efficiency.
Yeah.
My friends, so besides just, Sophie and Alcorn Immigration, there's other ways to connect with social media. They have a great newsletter. They do their own webinars, podcast. So we'll have links for those in the description. That way you guys can connect with Sophie or me at Shine Coaching as well deeper and get more resources, more tips. I want to make sure you guys connect there. But the last thing we want to address, just what are going to be the highest demand visas in 2023? What are people looking for? Where's going to be the competition? What based on the current economy and government, what's going to be going on? What's going to keep you guys busy at Alcorn?
Oh, this is such a fun and interesting question to think about. So the H-1B is always popular because it's the most well-known work visa, and the supply and demand nature with the lottery is always in the news. And so pay attention to that. I think that there will be my prediction, and we can find out if it's true after the start of April. But I predict that there will be fewer H-1B registrants in the lottery this year than last year.
Okay.
And so there will be a higher likelihood of being accepted in the H-1B lottery for anybody. So that's really exciting. I'm also seeing, as COVID kind of like fades into the background finally, a little bit more, and I know it's different in Dallas than California, Rob, but
Yeah.
you're like, what? That was a long time ago. I'm like, oh, we're still living in it. So that means that more people are coming as travelers and visitors. A lot of
Mhm.
people are getting B1, B2 visitors visas to come here now. And this kind of ended in COVID because of travel, but there's this whole world of people who end up coming here as a visitor for 6 months, and they're like, oh my God, my plans changed. Now I applied to this school and I got in, or oh, now I met the love of my life, or oh, I just realized I have this amazing business opportunity. So how can I change my status once I'm in the
Mhm.
United States to something else? So we're seeing more of that. And then also just the demand for EB1A and EB2 NIW green cards, and also O1 visas for extraordinary ability. Like if you just want to bypass the H-1B lottery, especially we do this a lot with startup founders. It's like, no, I want to be the CEO. I don't want to have to fulfill the prevailing wage requirements. I want to have a lot of gig work that I do, and I want to make money from my consulting work and other places as well. So the O1 is an amazing non-immigrant visa, short-term 3-year work visa solution for those criteria. So definitely we see demand increasing for O1s as well.
Fantastic. Great to be aware of these things. I hope that the H-1B competition is less and that will become true and helpful for people, especially with that master's cap. All right, friends, it's time to get into the live Q&A. If you've got a friend who you know has visa immigration questions, go ahead and text them a link so they can join us for this back half. But as people will start throwing their questions in the comments, so again, if it's in the comments, we'll put it up on the screen, answer them live here with expert Sophie. But Sophie, you founded your own Alcorn Immigration. What are the best ways and services? How can you help people? What do they need to know about Alcorn Immigration as we jump into this live Q&A?
Thank you so much, Rob. So we help startups and early stage technology companies with immigration. So people who are anywhere in the world or already in the United States who need another type of visa or green card, and they are either starting tech companies or working at tech companies, we would love to help. We delight in supporting people with STEM majors to navigate this path. And also we help a lot of people who are startup founders, but also just like experts in their field to do these self-petitioned green cards. So we would love to help. And the best way to contact us is just by emailing hello@alcorn.law, ALCORN.LAW. You can also check out our website, alcorn.law, and you posted a lot of the links. So thank you so much. We have the podcast Immigration Law for Tech Startups, as well as the Dear Sophie column in TechCrunch, and a lot is posted regularly on our blog and in social media. So we would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Tons of great resources. Let us jump into live Q&A. Thanks for all of you who've stuck around. We got people from all over the world, which is exciting.
Super exciting. I saw Botswana in there and China and everywhere.
Okay, I've got a question here, kind of two-part. So let's start. So we got Marco from Serbia. They're planning to apply this year again for the same petitioner company, but they were denied last year for H-2B. They apply again and show changes in status. So what changes do they mean when they want to see a change in status?
Okay, so the H-2B is a temporary visa for workers who are not professional workers and they're not agricultural workers. So this could be people working in construction or people working in hotels. The H-2B visa is specifically for people with non-immigrant intent. And so that means that if they think that you're going to try to overstay your visa or work in other jobs or marry an American, those would all be very, very common reasons that you could be denied for an H-2B. It's sort of like an F-1 in that sense. And so the way to overcome that, if you do another visa interview, is to have lots and lots of proof of your ties to your home country. Here's my bank account. Here's my property that I own. Here are letters from my family members. Here are the 5 family weddings that I have to be back for next summer and all of the invitations. So it's your burden of proof. It's your job when you're seeking a non-immigrant intent visa to prove that this travel is only temporary and it is your true good faith bona fide intention to return to the United States after only coming for the limited purpose of what this visa is authorized for. So those are some of the things that might be helpful if you apply again. But the company's immigration lawyer that helped with the H-2B petition should be able to give you some more direction based on whatever happened last year.
Great. So we've talked a lot about H-1B and work visas and B-1 tourist visas. Someone wants to know more about the B-1 business option, especially if they're for more of an entrepreneurial background.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So the B-1, B-2, so the B-1 is the visitor for business. If you are outside of the United States and you're seeking a B-1, B-2 visitor visa in your passport at a stamping interview at a consulate, most countries have treaties and reciprocity agreements that allow for people to get a 10-year multiple entry visa. So every time you want to come in, you just show that, and then they put a stamp in your passport at the airport or the border, and it says you're allowed to stay for up to 6 months, typically. Now, some countries, like, you can only get a 6-month single entry visitor visa, and then when you come in, they're only going to let you stay for 3 months. You always have to look at the details. But in general, 6 months is the maximum. You can also extend it for another 6 months once you're in the United States if circumstances require it. We had to do that in COVID a lot for people who got stuck here. But the B-1 option, you cannot work, but you can do business activities. The whole legal system is super antiquated. So these laws were written in the 50s and 60s when a tailor would come on a ship from China with a measuring tape to measure people for their suits. And then he would take their money and then go back home. And then they would make the suits in a factory in China. And then they would ship the suits to San Francisco. That's some of the most recent case law on business visitors.
Oh gosh.
Right. So there's no phones, there's no internet, there's no email, there's no digital nomads. So you got to be really careful. And also, I did a podcast. I've done several podcasts. One was with Mandy from Argo. So if you look at the immigration law for tech startups, I'll try to find that link for you, Rob. But she is a former State Department consular officer, and we were talking about how do entrepreneurs qualify for B-1, and it's very subjective. It's very, very, very subjective, right? So what you're allowed to do is come to the U.S. for to develop business, but you're not allowed to come here for employment purposes. So what's the different definition of employment in immigration law? It's, okay, are you performing services for which you intend to receive remuneration in the future? So it's so vague, right? And I think that if you are a founder coding, developing your SaaS platform on a couch in a hacker home, and you've already incorporated a US Delaware C corporation, like that may actually cross the line and not be allowed, because that's labor in hope of having $1 billion exit one day. Like more concretely, you're definitely not allowed to be employed on somebody's payroll on a B1. Like that's a no-go. But that's why I was saying, like, a lot of the legitimate stuff that people do if they're more entrepreneurial on B1 is like attend conferences, attend events, go to hackathons, go to pitch competitions. You can be the judge of things. It's a lot of this stuff that would position you to become qualified for an O1 visa for extraordinary ability. So you can do all the negotiation, business setup, foundational stuff, but you're not just like, if you're going to hire a manager or like a director North America, right, to like run this stuff for you and actually work in the business so that you're just like the business owner. That's kind of how I see it at this point.
Thanks. Natisha's asking, for F1 students who are on their OPT, they don't get picked up for H-1B and that OPT period is ending. What are options that they can consider?
Okay. So on the more expensive side, in terms of money, time, energy, opportunity cost, you could simply enroll in another degree program, and now you've done your master's, now go get a PhD or go to these schools. There's like many schools that offer this thing called Day One CPT. And just be very careful with that to make sure that the school meets all of the requirements of how you maintain your status, how often you go to campus for class. The Trump administration set up fake schools that didn't meet the requirements to lure students into enrolling, and then they deported them. So you just have to be so careful. Now, the one that I really like, the option I really like, if you have a job, and a lot of our startups that do have some runway and are very committed to helping their key employees, what they do is something called a cap exempt H-1B. And there's a particular nonprofit we really like to work with called Open Avenues Foundation. And your company can nominate you to be a global talent fellow at Open Avenues. And basically, Open Avenues will get you an H-1B without the lottery to work for them for 5 hours a week. Your company is paying for everything and, giving money to the nonprofit to cover all of this. And then you get to lead a bunch of students in micro internships and group projects to have like access to STEM project-based learning. And they do stuff for your company where you're telling them what to do. And so as soon as you get that first H-1B without the lottery, then your company can apply for a second concurrent H-1B. And we do this for a lot of our clients, which is like, okay, great. You got this 5 hour a week nonprofit H-1B. Now we're going to add in another 35 or 40 hour a week H-1B for the other company, the real company, the original company, so that you can also just work as a normal employee there. So that's also great. Getting positioned for an O1, so you don't even have to deal with the H-1B lottery, is also great. And if you can somehow get to the point of having a current priority date for a green card, then you could also file an I-485 adjustment of status application for permanent residence and get a work permit through that. And that would allow you to stay in the United States as well. So there's a variety of opportunities. I think it depends on how much time you have, what your job is, do you have an employer? So it's very
Don't wait to the last second. Plan ahead.
Yeah. And like moving forward, I think I'm just like telling, because I advise a lot of Stanford and Berkeley students on like immigration planning for the future. And even when they're like juniors or seniors, it's like, dude, just figure out how you can start getting ready for an O1 now. Like as a student, like I know people who've done incredible volunteer projects where they're making tons of impact and it's legitimately not a job or not work. And they have enough time to get famous for that and build up the portfolio of accomplishments. And then there's like no shame or hiding, because I'm like, look, USCIS, here's all the stuff they legitimately did. They did not earn anything. They are broke, but look how amazing they are. And they didn't violate any rules, and give them an O1. And so you have time to do that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of O1, RJ wants to know is, can a YouTuber apply for an O1 visa?
Yes, and we have gotten O1s approved for YouTubers. It is definitely possible. Yeah, so the O1 can work for people engaged in business, and being a YouTuber is definitely a business. We would want to show your channel, your subscribers, your likes, all of your YouTube reporting statistics, your community. We would want to show press from other sources talking about what you've done. We can show your revenue. And then, there might be other things you also need to do, like write articles on how to become a YouTuber, and we'll get those published somewhere cool. And then that will like help bolster it. But yeah, that can definitely be your field of endeavor.
Yeah. And yeah, publicity, publications, getting other sources to talk about you doing that thing can definitely help.
Yeah.
So that's cool. All right, Hazik, good question here. Does previous work experience across different platforms and industry and a master's degree in STEM make for a good E1B or EB1 petition, or does it have to include research and publications?
That's a wonderful question, Hazik. So you do not need to be a researcher to get an EB1. You can be in business. We've gotten it for like a product manager at Facebook or something, right? So there's like many, many, many ways to do it. You can be in the arts, you can be in sports, you can be in education, you can be in business. There's a lot of ways to do it. The challenge typically when you come from private industry is that you might not be famous enough based on the work that you did in your companies, and they might hold a lot of your work secret. So you have to be very proactive, like, ooh, we got a patent. Hey, CEO, can I be in the press releases talking about this patent and how I invented it for the company?
Get credit.
You want to get as much credit as you can. And, we've tried like for some big tech companies, if people are on hiring committees or looking at other employees like OKRs and stuff, does that qualify to be a judge? But like, yeah, you want to be a judge of some like competitions, not like an internal company judge. So you just have to be a little bit more deliberate to get famous enough in probably the minimum's 3, but I usually like to say 4 or 5 of the 10 EB1 categories, but it's definitely doable.
Okay. Let's talk about some immigration law here. Shriram wants to know, will the F1 dual intent visa program initially passed by a bill in the Act of 2021 ever come to fruition? Maybe what is that, and what are your thoughts?
Well, when I get my crystal ball, I would love for F1 to be dual intent. I would also love, and maybe this is a related thing, there's so many immigration proposals floating around all the time that sadly don't come to fruition, but there's a related thing of like anybody with an advanced degree could just simply self-petition a green card right after they graduate. That would be so incredible. Immigration is really, really, really slow-moving, bureaucratic, and stuck due to a lot of political reasons. So it will take a lot to change the law. So I worked on, because I got to help write a startup visa that got passed. It's called the Like Act, and it actually got passed by the House. And then the National Venture Capital Association was like, hey, let's try to include that in like the CHIPS bill for research and all these other things for like American competitiveness internationally in terms of deep tech. But it couldn't make it through the Senate. So like a lot of this, there's, with immigration politics in particular, there's a coalition that basically carved up what they wanted to happen after September 11th. And they've been fighting for 20 years, but like That's the way they want it. And so these other things that are great ideas and really cool, it's hard for them even to get support from the immigration supporters, because the immigration supporters are in this like deadlock truce of like, none of us get what we want unless all of us get what we want. So it's a very difficult landscape to try to change.
Got it. So a good technicality question here from Shidij. I've read that I need to re-enter U.S. to start working with a new employer if I change the status to B1, B2 is pending. Do I need to get a new H-1B stamp in order to re-enter?
Okay, that's a great question. I think I understand it. I'll
So it looks
take
like
a stab at it.
maybe this is an H-1B layoff. They did the B1, B2 pivot, and then do they need the new stamp?
Oh,
Maybe that might be the situation.
yeah, that could be. So the answer is no, but also it depends on what the company's lawyer will advise you to do. So I have helped many people with different timelines where it was like, oh, at month 2, into the B1, B2, the H-1B change of status was approved, and so they could start working again. And then like 3 months later, we got the B1, B2 approval, and it was fine. But since the timing is a lot longer now, the company may advise you to leave and come back in. But I don't, in general, that might not be necessary, but it might help provide a clean slate if you can, travel. But then to get back in when you travel, you do need, if you want to work in H-1B status, and that's your intent when you're at the airport and coming in, you need an H-1B visa in your passport. And you can use the H-1B multiple entry visa if it's still valid and hasn't expired yet from a prior company, with a new approved I-797C approval notice of the new H-1B transfer petition for the change of employer to the new company, and a valid, like offer letter. So you can use the old visa and new documents to come in for the new company. But if you don't have any H-1B visa in your passport, it may be more prudent to simply stay in the country, unless you can now like go to the Bahamas or whatever to get a visa. It's complicated. You should, if you're in the US and you're still looking for a job, definitely do a change of status to B1, B2 before the end of your 60 days, if that's your only option. Like, do that, and then you can always figure out the rest of this later. It's like so situational, fact, country, timeline dependent, employer dependent.
Okay.
But just have a good foundation of safety.
Do the research, get those details right.
Yeah.
So Omkar is asking, they're going for a J1, which is a student visa type, visa interview. Can they do it 2 months before the starting date of the program? From what I know is you can really give a student visa interview anytime before the program starts. You just can't enter the country more than 30 days before the program starts. Is there anything specific about the J1?
120 days is the earliest. The consulates cannot issue the J1 visa more than 120 days before the start date of the program. So I think 2 months should be fine.
Yeah, so 2 months is the kind of start of that window of before the
That's 60
program.
days, so you could do it up to 4 months, maybe.
Oh, yeah. So 120 would be 4 months.
Yeah.
So
so it should be fine.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Sharif's asking, they're a student in the UK. They're visiting Disneyland in Florida. Say hi to Mickey for us. And what is their chances of getting a visa? They've been denied twice before.
Well, I suppose maybe I misunderstood this comment originally. I can't tell if you're already in Disneyland on like a B2 visitor visa and you've been denied a student visa, or if you're in the UK and you want to come to Disneyland and you can't get a visitor visa.
Yeah. Maybe we need some more context on that. So Sharif, send us another comment with more details.
I think that if somebody it can make it okay. I've seen anecdotal stories where somebody was from like and I don't know what country you're from, but like Pakistan or India or Iran or something, and then they move to like Germany or London or Singapore, and they're previously denied. But it can go better to get a visa from like London in this situation, because the consulates probably have a higher approval rate in general, and then they like take all these what's it called, like subconscious bias based shortcuts, like, oh, he's in London now, he's not going to overstay, he's got a good life, so we don't have to worry about it. So it might be easier, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Nitish, I think he wants a little bit more on the nonprofit. So how can they get in touch to know more about the nonprofit H-1B, kind of that non-cap H-1B option? Do you want to mention that again? Then I'll put the link to that later in the video description too, so people can find that.
So first of all, you need a company to hire you. It doesn't work unless a company wants to offer you a job. If there's a company that wants to offer you a job, but the lottery isn't working out, or you need a visa at another time besides the lottery, then the company can go to Open Avenues Foundation and nominate you to be a Global Talent Fellow to participate. And, in the future, maybe other nonprofits will have different business models, but this is the way it's working with Open Avenues. And Rob has that link to share with everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, follow that up there. And I'll add it to the video when we're done here. But my friends, we have crossed an hour. Sophie's time is very precious, and it was a gift for her to come and hang out for us this long and answer all your amazing questions. So thanks so much. Again, hit that like button to say thanks to her. Give her some love in the comment section. What was something great that you guys learned? What was something new that was helpful? Let us know in the comments. Sophie, how do you want to wrap this up? What final word would you want to give to our audience today?
Thank you so much, Rob. It's a pleasure being here with you, and thank you for you're like a light in the world. So thank you for shining that light to so many people. And I think my just my encouragement to everybody would be, where there's a will, there's a way. The immigration law system of the United States is complex, but the people who end up making it here are the people who are willing to take the risk and figure out how to go through the system. And it's totally doable, especially if you start early and deliberately. You can do it. I know you can. So happy to support, and just thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and share what I know with everybody. I hope it's helpful.
Definitely. I learned a ton. I love that. Yeah. Those who try and make an effort, good things are going to happen. Connect with Alcorn on social media, on Sophie on LinkedIn, be subscribed to Alcorn and China Coaching's email newsletter as well, so you don't miss out more great opportunities like this. And friends, have a great week. Happy Monday. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, everybody. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Rob.